Good morning, everyone. It's Roger Gewolf again, here with your grown-ups guide to avoiding the muck. The muck being all the nonsense pushed out by politicians and others, and pushing our way through it, hacking our way through the jargon jungle to get to the truth. Well, today is all about the black hole. Today is autumn statement or budget day, when Chancellor Jeremy Hunt will be giving us some really bad news, all the media outlets are saying. And the black hole doesn't exist. So say many, many economists and an awful lot of newspapers. The Mail, the Telegraph have all run stories on this. Many respectable media outlets have said there is no black hole, and that in fact, if Mr. Hunt used the same formulae that Rishi Sunak used all that time he was Chancellor, we wouldn't have a black hole of 50 billion pounds. We'd have a surplus of 14 billion. And personally, I see this as a political maneuver and construct. This is what politicians do all day, to generate a very lovely, huge cash pile, and then be able to make some swinging tax cuts just before a general election. So guess what? As always, this is all about them and not about us. There's always potentially another story behind the story that we hear. Some people are saying that the whole apocalypse now kamikaze episode was a setup. They were punished by the Bank of England and her friends for threatening to take away the historical independence of the Bank of England. So Andrew Bailey and his colleagues are said to have showed them, and that whole crash of UK PLC and drop in bonds and increased borrowing costs and everything else didn't happen all by itself. It was given a little nudge off the edge of the cliff that those two unfortunate people not up to their job, it seems, fell off of. But it didn't just happen through economic factors. So there's always another story there. And the story here is it's a political maneuver to get elected, because the Tories have damaged themselves so much over the recent years that one wit said recently that if Labour did nothing other than say the word marmalade to every question that they're asked between now and the next general election, they would win hands down. I mean, that's how bad it is, apparently. So this is a desperate, last-ditch, gigantic maneuver at the expense of every one of us in this country at a time when we can really least and ill afford it, to ensure that the Conservative Party and its individual members stay in power. And frankly, that makes me sick, okay? To do that to people today makes me froth and is just so irritating. I almost unusually can't find words to describe it. The black hole really exists apart from that political reason to fulfill Rishi Sunak's irrational and unnecessary expressed desire to repay the COVID debt as fast as possible, so as not, he says, to burden the youth with this. Well, I mean, is that another political move? Is he going for the youth vote? Is that what it's all about? Will the youth care? Will they even notice? Probably not, because by the time he repays it in a few years, if he actually manages to do that, the government will have borrowed for other things. So the budget, the deficit, the numbers will still be very similar. It's quite ridiculous, but it's a great excuse to claim why we have a black hole. And the other reason there is a black hole unnecessarily, if there even is one, or part of one, is that this government, like previous governments, simply seems to refuse to want to decouple our electricity from the price of gas. Now, 2/3 of your home energy bill comes from sources other 2/3 of your electricity bill comes, I'm sorry, 2/3 of your home energy bill, forgive me, is electricity. 1/3 is gas, 2/3 electricity. 80% of that 2/3, it's early and my brain is sort of going in and out. 80% of that 2/3 has nothing whatsoever to do with gas. It comes from renewable solar, wind, our own North Sea gas, nuclear, etc. So 80% of our electricity has nothing to do with gas, but due to conventions that have been in place since the 80s, when those industries were nationalized and never removed, we still pay for our electricity off the prices for international market gas, a figure which Putin, of course, is manipulating every day. And even without Putin, would still be many times higher than what our electricity actually costs. Some estimate that gap, that disconnect, at 60 billion pounds. So, that's another 10 billion pound surplus we'd have. So the whole thing is really a bit of a nonsense. And we're being duped. We're being told a story which just isn't true, and I've had enough of it. And you then get the Bank of England ridiculously posting on social media that they're raising interest rates to the extraordinarily high levels as quickly as they have in order to curb inflation, which hasn't worked, and protect against the dollar, which hasn't worked. The dollar is now starting to come back on its own and inflation is coming down. But that's being driven by other factors, which you can see in the United States. But the bank is claiming credit for it, of course. And the truth of the matter is that what really should have happened is the Bank of England should have been gradually increasing interest rates from their historic low over the last 10 years. And then we wouldn't notice. It's like, they say that if you put a frog in a beaker of water and heat it slowly, it starts to boil and the frog dies, but the frog doesn't notice it because it happens so slowly. Well, they could have increased our interest rates to a point where they weren't the kind of shock that they are today, and they're now trying to make up for that by claiming that they have to reduce spending. But hello, nobody can afford to spend, so what are you talking about? It's just more dissembling and obfuscating, to put it politely, by our politicians, and I am really sick and tired of it. Aren't you? Well, thank you for listening, and goodbye, everyone, and it's Roger and out.